Is a low-lying placenta dangerous, or does it just require a cesarean? If you had a low-lying placenta, let me know in the comments what your experience was. So a low-lying placenta is a placenta that is close to the cervix. So the cervix is the opening that the baby needs to come out of. And the placenta growing close to the cervical outlet can be a cause for concern if it remains there throughout the pregnancy, or if there's any bleeding or abdominal pain early on into pregnancy. A low-lying placenta is diagnosed on that 18 to 22 week anomaly scan that is offered here in the UK. Now, what normally happens is as you approach that third trimester, so the end of the second trimester, start of the third trimester, that lower segment of the uterus starts growing and forming. And as you can see here, what will happen is as that grows is actually the placenta moves up further away from the cervical opening, therefore not necessarily being a cause for concern. And it's why if you have a low-lying placenta that's on the front of your uterus and is close to the cervix but not completely covering it, that's something else called a placenta previa, then what will tend to happen is that you come back somewhere between 32 and 34 weeks for another scan to see if that placenta has moved as that pregnancy has grown. As you can see here, that lower segment has now formed, therefore that placenta can move away from the cervix. Now, if it's on the posterior walls, if it's on the back of the uterus, then it's harder for it to move. It's not impossible for it to move, but it can be more challenging for it to move away. Now, if it continues to actually cover the cervix, it's what we call a placenta previa. And if it's completely covering the exit, then yes, that can be more dangerous. That can increase the chance of preterm birth, preterm labour, having a baby much earlier. It can increase the chance of antenatal hemorrhage. That's where the bleeding happens, because if the cervix starts to open, that placenta with all the blood flow is going through the opening, which can cause major hemorrhage for some women. It also increases the chance of needing a blood transfusion, and in the worst case scenarios, a hysterectomy as well. Placenta previa is on the increase here in the UK because of the increasing caesarean birth and uterine surgery rate that's happening here in the UK. Many women who have a placenta previa, grade 1, 2, 3 or 4, tend to be admitted at some point within their pregnancy for a hospital stay, because if their cervix starts opening or they start going into labour or having abdominal pain, they need to have access to theatres very quickly in case that bleeding continues and doesn't stop. Most women with a placenta previa will find that they have lots of little bleeds in their pregnancy as well. So these are the ones that are covering the cervix, not necessarily the low-lying ones. Sometimes women with low-lying placentas do find that they get lots of spotting and bleeding. It's really worth being aware of that if you have a low-lying placenta, that you need to actually make contact with your maternity units as soon as possible if you have any bleeding. Because sometimes as that placenta moves up, it can cause a little bit of spotting and bleeding, but it's really important to know, is it still low-lying? Is it a placenta previa? Is there any other concerns? What's your blood group? Do you need anti-D, for example? Lots of other things. So any bleeding at all in your pregnancy of any person needs exploring and investigating. Now, it's worth noting that if your placenta has moved up and out the way, it's no longer low-lying, it's no longer covering that cervix, a vaginal birth is absolutely fine to go ahead as long as there's no other medical contraindications or maternal choice there. But low-lying placentas, more often than not, 90% of them will have moved away by 32 to 34 weeks in most cases. I personally had a low-lying placenta in my second pregnancy, and it had moved up by the time I was 32 weeks, which was really reassuring and meant that I could go ahead with a vaginal birth.